everybody, my name is Tanya and welcome to my April wrap-up. So this is the first video that I filmed since Mercedes from Mercy Squish Musings did her booktuber shout-out video, and I'm just blown away by the response to that. Obviously Mercedes included me in that shout-out video, and so many of you have come across and subscribed to me now, and I just like to say thank you so much to Mercedes and to everybody who's come across. I really appreciate it and welcome new friends. So if by some miracle you've not landed here because of Mercedes and that you're subscribed to me and you don't know who she is, please go check her out. I will link her in the description and also her shout out video in the description, because she shouted out a whole bunch of fantastic booktubers, some of which I was subscribed to already and others that I was not. So they're all definitely worth checking out as well, but definitely subscribe to Mercedes. She's amazing. She has a gorgeous book collection. If you have been enjoying my bookshelf tour, Mercedes has got such lovely books on her shelves, and there are quite a few that we share the same, although possibly not too much that I've shown on my shelves so far, but there are quite a few editions that she has that I have too. So if you've been enjoying those, definitely do go check Mercedes out, because I think you'll love her too. So April was quite a strange reading month for me. I read some great things and was really enjoying my reading, but everything seemed to take me quite a long time to do, and I just wasn't picking books up as regularly as I possibly should have. Also true, I've had a bit more going on in this month in terms of actual, you know, social things and leaving my house for a change, which is probably a good thing, but it has impacted a little bit on my reading time and also my watching time for booktube videos. Football season just started up in Australia, so the AFL, Aussie Rules Football, and I have a membership with the team I support, so I have tickets to go to all of the home matches. So the last 3 weekends of April I was at the football, so that took a big chunk out of my Sunday afternoons. So apparently life actually intruded a little bit this month, which, you know, is probably not a bad thing. I probably should have one of those one of these days. So consequently I didn't complete everything that I wanted to complete in the month, but I'm okay with that. So I'll run through now what I was able to complete and what I've still got that I'm almost there on, but just not quite. So very excitingly, the first thing that I finished in April was Middlemarch by George Eliot. As I talked about in my March wrap-up, I had struggled with this one initially. I was enjoying it, but it was just taking so long and I couldn't have any kind of outside distractions when I was trying to read this. It was very much I had to be completely focused on it to really take the story in, and that just isn't possible in most situations. So I had switched to the audiobook narrated by Juliet Stevenson, and I would so recommend that as the best way to go when reading Middlemarch, because it made the world of difference for me. This of course is the one that I was buddy reading with Erica from Erica Read-Along, and I'm so glad that we picked it up and that we were able to get through it. In the end I really enjoyed this. So there were parts of this that were hard, and there were parts of this that probably weren't as interesting as others, but in general I loved it, and it was all worth it in the end. This is kind of the tale of a town and a whole cast of characters that reside in this town or in and around this town and this society, and kind of focuses on a few different couples within that society and their trials and tribulations, and will they or won't they, and is there a happy ending or is there not a happy ending for people. And in the end I really did get invested in the lives of those characters. Certainly there's quite a wide range of characters that are kind of minor subplots, and I didn't care so much about their storylines, but certainly there were characters that I loved and was cheering for, and there were other characters I wanted to shake and slap and just tell them to wake up, seriously, you're ruining everything. And I think anything that can kind of elicit that kind of emotion is great. So all in all, I'm really pleased that I've now read this one, and I definitely enjoyed it. So the next book I started and completed is probably the reason why things seem to take so long, because it is pretty huge, and for all that it's incredibly compelling and I wanted to be reading it, it's huge. Of course I'm not going to finish it in an instant, but after reading the second book in the series last month and the way it ended, I immediately dived into Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson. So of course this was the Year of Cosmere book of the month and is the third book in the Swan trilogy, and after reading the second book last month I was definitely intrigued to see where it was going to go from there. As expected, this was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, it seemed to take quite a while to read it, but really it's probably not all that surprising if I think about it. But I'm so pleased to have finally picked up some Brandon Sanderson. I'm so pleased for the Year of Cosmere for the push to do that. I love this. I gave it 5 stars. Possibly it doesn't deserve that, but just the overall reading experience and how epic this whole story was, I just loved it. So I'm not going to talk about the plot because of course this is the third in the series, and basically anything I could say would be a major spoiler for earlier books. But suffice to say that this is such an amazing world. I still love the magic system. I think it's one of the most creative that I've read about, and Brandon Sanderson seems to have quite a few different creative magic systems. This definitely won't be the only series that I read by him. I will be reading many more Brandon Sanderson books in the future. The next book I completed was one of my school picks of the month, and that was Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. I've been looking forward to rereading this one for quite some time, so it was great to finally get to that. As expected, it was wonderful. I read it basically in one sitting, I think, just a couple of sittings. It's a tiny little thing, so definitely a big contrast to the two books that I'd completed so far in the month. As usual, being a school book, I'm not going to talk too much about this here because it will have an individual video. I'm getting very behind on those. I do need to do some work in catching up, and the ones I've put out so far have not necessarily been what I wanted them to be, so I'm going to have to rethink this whole school books project a little bit, I think, but I am hoping to catch up soon on the videos that I am behind. But I think most people are quite familiar with the storyline of this one and may have read it in school yourselves. Really touching, really wonderful. This is finally where my school book's starting to get a little bit better and a little bit more age appropriate, perhaps. The next book I completed was another of my school books for the month, and that was Looking for Alberni by Melina Marchetta. This, as I mentioned in my TBR video for the month, is one that I read before I read it at school, and it was probably one of the only YA books that I read during my YA years. I kind of moved from children's books through to adult books without really going through a YA segment in the middle. There are a few things that I read, and this was one of them, but in general I kind of jumped from children's to adult books. Again, I won't talk too much about this because there will be some form of video about this in the future, but this is a story of Josephine Alberni, who's in her final year at high school, and she's dealing with a very traditional Italian grandmother and kind of family angst and boy angst and just general life angst, and I really enjoyed this at the time. I really enjoyed rereading it now, and rereading this has made me want to rewatch the movie too. So I might have to track that down at some point in time. The next book I completed for the month was the BookTube Reading Buddies group read, and that was Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. Because I've been so caught up in other things and I wasn't kind of progressing through books as fast as I had hoped I was going to be, I ended up getting this one using one of my Audible credits instead, so I listened to the audiobook of this instead of actually reading this copy. As a lot of you will already know, this is kind of a post-apocalyptic novel in which a version of the swine flu has wiped out 99% of the population. There aren't many people left, and dealing with the aftermath of that and the collapse of civilization. But instead of just being a straight post-apocalyptic novel or, you know, apocalyptic, it's happening now, this kind of weaves together a lot of storylines of before, of during, and of after in various stages. So the kind of main action is happening 20 years after the collapse and when civilization was destroyed, but we have kind of flashbacks to earlier periods after the collapse. We have flashbacks to during the outbreak of the flu. We have flashbacks quite far into the past of the lives of various characters before the collapse, and I really enjoyed that kind of weaving of different storylines in different time periods in to make a bigger picture. So this of course was huge on BookTube late last year, and everything I heard about it at the time made me think it was something that I would really enjoy, and I was really excited to pick it up. Initially it wasn't quite living up to that hype for me. I was enjoying it, but it wasn't maybe as great as everybody else thought it was. As time went on, it grew on me more and more, and I grew to appreciate it more and more, and I did come to really enjoy it, but it took me that little bit of time to warm up to it somehow. Reading books like this, of course, always makes me think about how little I know about the world that I live in and how little I know about any form of technology or any just basic appliances that we now rely on so heavily for survival. I've got no clue about how any of them function. I don't have mechanical bent. I'm interested in technology, and I do technically work in IT within a library setting, but I'm not very technologically minded in terms of actual construction or how things work. And our modern society, of course, is so very reliant on all these technologies working, not only for convenience, but for survival. And you can imagine just how quickly things could collapse, like this book or like other kind of post-apocalyptic novels. Basically, it makes me realise just how screwed I am if the end of the world comes. What I enjoyed about this too is it's a post-apocalyptic tale, and the majority of the population has been worked out, but there isn't that kind of fantastical element to it. So this isn't a zombie apocalypse book, or it's not, you know, a vampire apocalypse book. It's just 90-something% of the population has died, and what the hell we're going to do next. And the last book that I was able to complete for the month, there were some other things that I had made some progress on but hadn't quite completed. But the last book that I was able to complete for the month was my Agatha, and that is The Body in the Library. Now I'm back to kind of finishing Agatha on the last day of the month again. But anyway, this was one that was a first time read for me, and no, I did not guess the whodunit because I don't guess the whodunit. This is a story of a couple who find one morning that there is a dead body in their library and they've never seen her before. And how the hell did she get there? This is one of Agatha Christie's Miss Marple novels, and I think this was the 40th book that I've read for my chronological read-through of Agatha Christie's works, but this is only the 3rd Miss Marple novel that she's written. Now, she doesn't have all that many Miss Marple novels, but Poirot and Miss Marple are kind of thrown up as her big detectives, and so it's interesting that it's taken her this long to really start writing more about her. And this one is interesting in that while she's very integral in solving the case, Miss Marple isn't very present for a lot of this, and it's only quite a small volume, so that means her actual page time isn't all that large, but of course she's able to come in and solve the mystery and work out who done it. It's not one of my favourite Agathas, but it's definitely wonderful, and of course I would recommend it. So as I said, that was the last book that I was able to complete by the end of the month. So if you remember my April TBR, there are some notable omissions. Sadly enough, I haven't actually finished my BookTube Recommends project pick for the month yet, and that of course was Inda by Sherwood Smith. I've reached the end of part 1 in this one. I'm halfway through. I'm loving it so far. I'm been really invested in what's happening in part 1. I'm kind of still getting adjusted with part 2 at this stage. I haven't fully got into that yet, and how things are different. But I'm really hoping that I can finish this soon and catch up and move on to the second book in the series. This, of course, is the pick that was recommended to me by Sam over at Novels and Nonsense, and she was running a read-along for this month, IndaClub, and there's a Goodreads group that I will link down below. So I'm disappointed not to have finished it in the month, but it's okay, I will catch up. So I will talk more about this when I've actually completed it, and we'll do a review video then. And the next book that I haven't quite finished was The Swan book by Alexis Wright. This is the one that I was buddy reading with Jane from Yes Miss Jane, and neither of us have quite finished it before the end of the month, but that's okay. So I've gotten to 70-something% of this one. It's not going to take me too long to read this, but it's quite a heavy book and it's not something that I can just fly through. So stay tuned for that one in my next wrap up. And then I've got one book from my TBR that I didn't get to at all, and that was Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare. So I'll pick this up this month in May instead, and that will be fine. So these were the 6 things that I was able to complete in the month of April, even if I was the majority of the way through Middlemarch at the start of the month. I'm still fairly happy with this. Like I said, it's been a funny old month in terms of reading, and I've had a bit more going on socially, so if you've read any of these books or have any questions about them, do let me know in the comments. I'd be very interested to hear your thoughts, and as always, thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!